Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to our video series on budget deficits and fiscal policy. In this video, we're going to talk about strategic debt accumulation. In this video, we will discuss the possible political considerations that are at play for running an inefficiently high deficit based on the model of Tableni and Alisa in 1990. The idea is that the current party which holds a policy position may disagree with the policies of another party which is expected to be elected. So in order to constrain their policy making, they will run a high deficit. The main question is, how can we model this process simply, and is it possible to see some counterintuitive fiscal policies based on the parties in power? So to play the stereotype, can we have a case where we see conservatives run a deficit while liberals balance the budget? So a simple model of this process is the following. We're going to think about an economy that lasts for only two periods. Period 1 is managed by policymaker 1 and period 2 is managed by policymaker 2. Government spending is allocated between two types of public goods, that being military and non-military, denoted by M and N respectively. The policymaker's budget constraints are defined as followings, with this one over here being defined for our first period policymaker. That means he has access to both the endowment that is given to him and the deficit that he can go and draw. Meanwhile, our second period policymaker, he has to deal with the deficit imposed by our individual here. Now, if our voters' preferences are defined as follows, right? That means that they're going to maximize this expected, lifetime utility function here. I mean, it's not really a utility function, it's a value function, right? And the way it stands here is that there's no real incentive to go and run a deficit here because our individuals are just going to smooth their consumption over time, right? And no deficit will be drawn upon there. So how does deficit spending occur? In order for policymaker 1 to constrain the actions of policymaker 2, they must have different preferences. The way we do this is through random participation in the political process in each period, which impacts the weights of alpha I in each period. Thus, agent I's utility in period 2 is determined by the following result. That meaning being that we have an individual I in period 2, which is given by the superscript, as a function of our military expenditures, right? And this is just fine that we're going into defining things this way because just given by our budget identity, and that's going to be equal to this weighted average between these two utilities. We will additionally assume, in line with most theory, that alpha I is chosen in line with the median voter theorem. Thus, we won't see extreme preferences for strictly military or non-military spending, and we'll denote this rule now on as alpha I with our superscript MED. So let's consider the case of logarithmic preferences, right? So when thinking about this, right, we're going to go and think about writing this optimization problems, noting N2, right, as previously implied, as W minus D, right, which is our wealth in our period 2, right, minus M2, right, to make it our optimization just a bit easier. Solving this equation, we get the following results. Let's now think about our first policymakers who's thinking about how to choose its deficit D based on policymakers 2's action. So let's go and think about this. So our subscript I down here, right? That's going to be our for 1, right? That being for individual I in player 2. So we have two different policymakers, and they're thinking about the value that they're going to go and get in that next period, right, as determined by their current spending. So they have to go and choose what the deficit is going to be. If we go and we simplify this equation over here, right, we go and we get this result down here. Note that even though we have not obtained an analytical solution to our first period, we have noted that our preferences for player 2 right here is going to be in the preferences for our first period policymaker over here, because we see it right here and right here, right? So even though we haven't given an analytical solution, we have successfully described the mechanism through which this deficit accumulation could go and take place. So this is a way that we go and we think about strategic debt accumulation. It's actually the simplest way to go about doing this. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. Take care.